Pirates braved storms, cannon fire, and angry captains, but few things were as unforgiving as the cold. Out on the open sea, warmth wasn't a comfort, it was survival. Without the right tricks, a freezing night could be deadlier than a sword fight. And pirates? They knew how to fight back. Their first line of defense wasn't treasure or weapons, it was what they wore. Pirates didn't just throw on whatever rags they had available, they developed systems that would impress even modern outdoor enthusiasts. First came thin linen shirts that wick sweat away from the body. Next, woolen midlayers trapped precious body heat. Finally, outer layers of leather or oilcloth kept wind and water at bay. A pirate might look bulky shuffling around the deck in all these clothes, but they'd live to plunder another day. Wet clothes could kill faster than any Navy patrol. When waves crashed over the gunwales and soaked a pirate to the bone, they had tricks to stay alive. Wool became their miracle fabric. Even when soaking wet, wool retains about 60% of its insulating properties. Pirates would quickly wring out wet garments rather than removing them entirely, knowing that even damp wool was better than nothing. Ships often had makeshift clotheslines strung below decks where garments could dry without being blown away. "A cold head makes for a dead pirate" wasn't just a saying, it was survival wisdom. While we picture pirates with flashy bandanas, their headwear choices were deeply practical. Tricorn hats weren't just for looks. Their broad brims channeled rain away from faces and necks. Under these, pirates often wore close-fitting caps or bandanas that covered their ears. Since humans lose up to 25% of body heat through their heads, this simple practice kept many pirates alive through bitter nights on watch. The humble sock became a treasure as valuable as gold doubloons when temperatures dropped. Pirates hoarded extra pairs and developed clever modifications. Some stuffed their footwear with straw or rags for extra insulation. Others wore multiple pairs layered together. One account from a captured pirate mentioned socks being so valuable that they were specifically listed in ship articles detailing how loot should be divided. When a Spanish merchant vessel was captured off the coast of Cuba in 1718, the first items pilfered weren't jewelry or coins, but the dry woolen socks found in the captain's quarters. The fingers and hands needed special attention too. Frostbitten digits couldn't tie knots or wield weapons, a deadly liability in their dangerous profession. Pirates fashioned crude mittens from scraps of leather and wool, often leaving the trigger finger exposed for those moments when they needed to defend the ship. Some crews swore by coating their hands in animal fat or whale oil before putting on gloves, creating an additional barrier against the biting cold. When pirates captured military vessels, the coats and boots aboard weren't just trophies, they were survival gear. Naval and army uniforms were made of higher quality wool and leather than most pirates could otherwise obtain. The thick wool coats of British Royal Navy officers were particularly prized, not just for their warmth, but for their waterproof qualities. Pirates cared little about insignias or decorations. They valued function over form when freezing winds blew. A pirate might sail with the emblem of 3 different navies on his stolen clothing, a fashion faux pas that kept him comfortably warm. Sometimes even the best clothing wasn't enough. On particularly frigid nights, pirates abandoned any pretense of personal space. They huddled together in groups, sharing body heat in the most sheltered parts of the ship. Some captains allowed the use of precious blankets and furs that would normally be saved for trade. In truly desperate times, cannonballs would be heated in the galley fire, wrapped in rags, and placed in sleeping areas to radiate warmth through the night, just far enough away to prevent burns. These clothing strategies weren't just about comfort, they were about survival and maintaining fighting capacity. A pirate crew suffering from hypothermia couldn't defend against attackers or manage a ship through stormy seas. The most successful pirate captains understood that keeping their crew warm was just as important as keeping them fed. But staying warm wasn't just about what pirates wore. As the biting cold continued to challenge them, they turned to what they put in their bodies as another source of warmth. Food wasn't just about satisfying hunger, it was fuel that kept the internal furnace burning when icy winds howled across the deck. Pirates discovered through trial and error that certain foods generated more body heat than others. Spicy ingredients became winter treasures on pirate ships. Hot peppers brought back from Caribbean raids weren't just for flavor. They triggered a genuine physical warming response. The capsaicin in hot peppers causes the body to increase blood flow and raise its temperature temporarily. One ship's log from 1706 noted that the cook would ration pepper supplies carefully during winter voyages, saving the hottest batches for the coldest nights. Salted meats, already a staple of seafaring diets for preservation purposes, served double duty in the fight against freezing temperatures. The high protein content required more energy to digest, generating heat in the process. Pirates navigating northern waters would consume extra portions of salt beef and pork when temperatures plummeted. Ship biscuits, those rock-hard staples of maritime meals, were dense with carbohydrates that provided slow-burning energy throughout long, cold watches. The relationship between rum and warmth stands as one of the greatest pirate misconceptions. While a swig of rum created an immediate sensation of warmth as it burned down the throat, this feeling was dangerously deceptive. Alcohol actually lowers core body temperature by dilating blood vessels near the skin, allowing precious heat to escape faster. Savvy pirate captains knew this truth and would often water down the rum rations during the coldest voyages. Many a pirate has felt toasty warm after a flask of rum, only to be found frozen stiff the next morning. The last party trick they'd ever perform. Despite the rum myth, pirates did utilize hot beverages effectively. They brewed rough approximations of tea, using whatever herbs and plants they could scavenge or trade for. These hot drinks, often sweetened with stolen honey or molasses, provided genuine warmth that lasted. Unlike modern sailors with their insulated mugs, pirates would cradle rough wooden or pewter cups in cold-numbed hands, absorbing heat through their palms as they sipped the steaming liquid. Creating hot meals presented a unique challenge on wooden vessels where open flames could spell disaster. Pirates employed small enclosed braziers, metal containers with ventilation holes that allowed controlled fires for cooking. These braziers would be carefully monitored, usually placed on sand or stone in the galley to prevent setting the ship ablaze. Ships that couldn't risk any flame at all relied on ports to cook multiple days' worth of stew or soup that could be reheated quickly or even eaten cold in the days that followed. When flames weren't an option, pirates developed workarounds that would impress modern camp chefs. They'd wrap food in cloth and tuck it inside their clothes, using body heat to warm it to something slightly more appetizing than ice-cold hardtack. Perhaps the original meal prep technique, if somewhat less Instagram-worthy than today's versions. Another trick involved warming metal spoons near whatever heat sources were available before dipping them into cold food, creating momentary pockets of warmth in an otherwise frigid meal. Sharing became essential when warmth was at stake. The communal pot wasn't just about fair distribution, it was a survival strategy. Hot soups and stews stayed warmer longer in a single large container than in individual portions. During the harshest conditions, pirates would gather around the pot, each taking turns dipping their utensils directly into the shared meal. This practice, frowned upon during warmer months due to disease spread, became acceptable when survival trumped hygiene. Some pirate ships developed sophisticated meal timing strategies for cold weather. The largest, hottest meal would be served before night watches began, providing maximum internal heat during the coldest hours. Those standing watch might receive hot bricks wrapped in cloth alongside smaller food portions every few hours. Not just nourishment, but portable warmth to help them endure until dawn. Food scarcity often plagued pirate crews, but during winter voyages, captains would sometimes authorize extra rations. They knew that hungry sailors froze faster, and a living crew, even one with slightly depleted stores, was better than a full larder and frozen corpses. Records from captured pirate ships show that winter rations could be up to 20% larger than summer portions, an investment in survival rather than generosity. While food and drink helped pirates generate internal heat, sometimes even the fullest belly couldn't combat the freezing temperatures that surrounded them. For those moments, pirates turned to more direct sources of warmth. Pirates faced a fundamental problem: how to create warmth on a wooden vessel without burning it to the waterline. This challenge required ingenuity that went beyond simply lighting a bonfire on deck. The wooden structure of sailing ships created a deadly paradox. Fire provided life-saving warmth, but threatened instant destruction if it escaped containment. A single stray ember could ignite tarred ropes, wooden planks, or canvas sails, turning a ship into a floating inferno within minutes. Records from the early 18th century show that approximately 1 in 20 ships lost at sea went down not from storms or enemy action, but from accidental fires. often started by desperate attempts to stay warm. As one pirate saying went, "Fire keeps you warm once, but drowning keeps you cold forever." To manage this risk, pirates developed specialized containers for controlled fires. Enclosed braziers became prized possessions on cold weather voyages. These metal containers, often crafted from repurposed ship parts or stolen goods, featured tight-fitting lids and ventilation holes that allowed heat to escape while containing sparks. More than one foolish cabin boy earned a lashing after leaving a brazier lid askew, a mistake that could have earned the entire crew a one-way swim in freezing waters. Ship lanterns served double duty during cold spells. Beyond providing light, the heat generated by oil lamps and candle lanterns became precious. Pirates would gather around navigation lanterns during night watches, using the modest heat to warm their hands. Some creative souls developed rotating schedules where crew members would take turns standing near the lantern, each warming different parts of their bodies before switching positions. One pirate journal mentions a lantern dance where sailors would shuffle in circles around the warmest lamp, leading to the only known instance where a ship's navigator threatened mutiny over excessive lamp-based choreography. Metal objects became unexpected allies in the battle against freezing temperatures. Cannonballs, normally instruments of destruction, transformed into heat reservoirs during bitter nights. The galley fire would be used to heat these iron spheres, which were then wrapped in scrap cloth and distributed throughout sleeping areas. A single heated cannonball could radiate warmth for hours, making the difference between sleep and shivering. Ship carpenters might heat their tools during the day, tucking warm hammers and mallets into their bedding at night to create pockets of heated air. The practice of sleeping in groups wasn't just a space-saving measure on crowded ships. Pirates practiced what modern survival experts call the huddle, a defensive formation against cold that relies on shared body heat. During Arctic passages, up to 6 men might sleep pressed together, rotating positions throughout the night so that no single person remained exposed to the cold edge of the formation. Studies of body heat transfer suggest this practice could raise the effective temperature experienced by the group by as much as 15 degrees. Stolen goods often found unexpected uses in pirate warming strategies. Luxurious furs and blankets intended for wealthy merchants became communal warming resources. Rugs and tapestries were repurposed as insulation, hung against the wooden walls of the ship to create air pockets that trapped heat. One account describes a pirate captain who ordered a stolen silk merchant's entire inventory used as insulation in the crew quarters, simultaneously keeping his men warm and removing evidence of the theft. The very structure of the ship dictated where warmth could be found. Ships generated their own heat patterns, with some areas naturally warmer than others. The galley, with its cooking fires, remained the heart of warmth. Areas near the center of the ship, below the waterline, maintained more stable temperatures than exposed upper decks. Pirates learned to map these warm zones and would rotate sleeping positions based on who had endured the coldest watches or performed the most physically demanding tasks. Ship design itself evolved partly in response to cold weather challenges. Pirates operating in northern waters preferred vessels with more enclosed spaces. They would modify captured ships, adding canvas partitions and makeshift walls to create smaller air pockets that retained heat more effectively. The most coveted ships had small, well-insulated captain's quarters, which explained why mutinies mysteriously increased by 30% during winter months. Nothing motivated democratic rearrangement of sleeping quarters quite like frostbite. Water, normally the enemy of warmth, could sometimes serve as an ally. The temperature of the sea itself rarely drops below freezing, maintaining a constant temperature that can feel warm compared to bitter winds. Some desperate pirates would use this principle by rigging tarps to catch and channel small amounts of seawater into containers within the ship's interior. This created thermal mass that, while damp, released steady heat as it gradually cooled to air temperature. These heating solutions required constant vigilance and adjustment. Unlike modern heating systems with their thermostats and automatic controls, pirate warmth depended on human attention. Watches would include checking braziers, rotating heating objects, and monitoring for dangerous situations. The role of fire watcher became critical, often assigned to the newest crew member, who learned quickly that falling asleep on this duty could mean death for everyone aboard. While these heat sources provided critical protection against the deadly cold, they represented only part of a pirate's winter survival strategy. The most successful crews combined these warming methods with other approaches that made life possible even in the harshest conditions. Cold has a way of seeping into bones, slowly draining energy until even the strongest sailor becomes a shivering, useless lump. Pirates discovered what modern science confirms: a moving body is a warm body. Where naval ships might allow idle sailors during peaceful passages, pirate vessels in cold waters developed a culture that kept everyone in motion. The normal jobs on a ship gave pirates many chances to warm up. Hoisting sails required tremendous upper body strength, generating heat that could last for hours afterward. During particularly frigid conditions, captains would order unnecessary sail changes, not for tactical advantage, but simply to keep the crew warm through physical labor. One pirate logbook mentions a captain who ordered the mainsail raised and lowered 7 times in a single morning, claiming he couldn't make up his mind about the weather when really he was preventing his crew from freezing solid. Deck scrubbing, normally a punishment or basic maintenance task, gained new purpose during winter voyages. The constant bending, scrubbing, and moving across the deck got blood flowing to fingers, toes, and ears, the body parts that freeze first. Some pirate ships developed rotation systems where each crew member spent at least 1 hour per day on hands and knees scrubbing, regardless of the deck's cleanliness. The unexpected benefit? Pirate ships operating in northern waters often had the cleanest decks in the Atlantic. The ropes and lines used to control the sails became a surprising friend in the fight against cold. Climbing the web of ropes that controlled sails made pirates use their whole body, creating lots of body heat. Records show that lookout duties in the crow's nest, typically the coldest, most exposed position on the ship, were limited to 15-minute shifts in Arctic conditions. The climb up and down actually produced more warmth than the time spent watching for ships or land. Combat training served dual purposes in freezing conditions. Sword practice, typically a daily routine on any fighting vessel, intensified during cold spells. Sparring with wooden practice swords or engaging in knife-throwing competitions kept blood pumping while maintaining essential skills. Winter pirate attacks were often preceded by unusually intensive training sessions, partially to prepare for battle, but equally to ensure the attacking crew was thoroughly warmed up before the fight began. Music and dance turned out to be powerful tools against the cold. Sea shanties weren't just for coordinating work. They provided rhythm for stomping dances that generated heat from the feet up. The hornpipe hustle became infamous on pirate vessels, with men jumping and spinning until sweat poured despite freezing temperatures. There's a reason the most elaborate pirate dances originated in northern waters rather than the Caribbean, and it wasn't because they had better musical taste. The small spaces below decks became makeshift workout spots during the worst weather. Pirates developed compact workouts that could be performed in cramped quarters. Push-ups against walls, squatting contests, and arm wrestling tournaments kept blood flowing when going above deck meant risking frostbite. One captured pirate's journal described daily competitions where the winner earned extra rum rations, creating fierce competition that coincidentally kept everyone warm. Rowing small boats between ships or to shore, normally considered exhausting labor, became a coveted assignment in cold weather. The full body motion of rowing generates heat quickly, warming even the most chilled pirate within minutes. Smart captains would rotate rowing duties among the coldest crew members, using the activity as targeted warmth therapy rather than punishment. Fighting, for all its dangers, had one good side effect: nobody felt cold during a battle. The mix of excitement, hard work, and focus made pirates forget about the cold for a while. Pirates noted that even brief skirmishes left participants sweating despite freezing temperatures. Some captains timed their attacks not based on tactical advantage, but on when their crew most needed warming up. Sleep itself became an active affair. Pirates would perform vigorous exercises immediately before climbing into hammocks or berths, generating heat that helped them fall asleep before the cold could take hold. Those on night watch developed routines of silent exercises performed every quarter hour. Squats, arm swings, and silent marching in place kept sentries both alert and warm through the coldest hours. While always moving around helped pirates stay alive at sea, they couldn't keep active all the time. Eventually, they needed to find a break from the never-ending cold by looking for warmer places. Smart pirates knew that sometimes the best way to deal with cold seas was to avoid them completely. Unlike Navy ships that had to follow orders and patrol set routes, pirate crews could choose where and when they sailed. This freedom became their secret weapon against winter's deadly grip. Most pirate crews followed seasonal routes that took them to warmer waters during the coldest months. Ships operating in the North Atlantic would drift south as autumn approaches, timing their movements to stay ahead of the worst weather. Written records show that pirate attacks in the Caribbean jumped by 60% during December through February. Not because pirates suddenly became more violent, but because they were simply following the warmth. During winter, the waters near Jamaica and the Bahamas became so crowded with pirate ships that locals joked you could walk from one island to another by hopping across pirate decks. This might be why Caribbean islands developed their spicy food traditions. Not to preserve the meat, as many think, but to keep all those winter pirates from getting too comfortable and staying year-round. Smart timing wasn't just about comfort, it saved lives. Records from captured pirate ships show that crews who stayed in northern waters year-round lost about 20% of their men to cold-related problems each winter. Those who followed the sun kept almost their full crew strength, losing men only to fights and rum-related accidents. When pirates couldn't escape the cold waters completely, they became masters at finding the warmest ports. Unlike Navy ships that might have to stay at sea for months, pirate vessels rarely went more than 2 weeks without touching land during winter. They mapped and shared knowledge about sheltered harbors, warm coves, and friendly ports where they could briefly escape the biting sea winds. Taverns played a surprisingly important role in pirate winter survival. These weren't just places to drink and gamble, they were winter rescue stations. A good tavern offered hours of warmth, hot food, and dry shelter. Pirates would save special coins just for tavern stops during winter voyages, knowing that a night by a roaring fire could mean the difference between life and death. When forced to make land away from ports, pirates became skilled at creating temporary camps. They built windbreaks from ship sails stretched between trees, placing them to catch the most sun while blocking the prevailing winds. Stolen goods often found new uses in these land camps. Fine furniture from captured merchant ships might end up smashed and burning in a pirate campfire. Expensive rugs became tent floors that kept the ground's chill away. Nothing says fearsome pirate quite like a bearded man in a pink silk dressing gown, but it beats freezing to death with your dignity intact. Pirates rarely stayed in one place for long, but some crews created semi-permanent winter shelters on remote islands. These simple huts, often dug partially into hillsides for extra protection, could be used year after year as crews followed their seasonal routes. What truly set successful pirate crews apart wasn't just their survival gear or warming tricks, it was their flexibility. They adapted to whatever conditions they faced, changing their entire lifestyle based on the weather. This adaptability became a pirate's greatest strength. These 5 approaches, clever clothing, strategic eating, innovative heat sources, constant movement, and smart seasonal planning, formed the complete pirate strategy for cold weather survival. Together, they demonstrate that pirates weren't just lucky or tough. They were creative problem solvers who developed an entire science of staying warm when the seas turned cold and deadly. Pirates survived brutal winter storms using 7 methods that sound completely insane. These weren't desperate last resorts, they were calculated survival strategies that separated living crews from frozen corpses. What could possibly be so effective that pirates willingly chose these bizarre techniques during the deadliest months at sea? The first method involved turning animal corpses into the worst-smelling heat source imaginable. Pirates burnt animal fat, called tallow, to create heat and light during freezing winter voyages. This greasy substance came from melting down chunks of fat from cows, pigs, sheep, or any other animals they could find. The process was simple, but smelled terrible. Pirates would heat animal fat in metal pots over cooking fires until it turned into a waxy, yellowish material that burned slowly. It was basically the world's stinkiest candle, but at least it worked. The smell was so bad it could probably knock a person unconscious, but when you're freezing to death in the middle of the ocean, even the worst-smelling warmth becomes precious. A single tallow lamp could provide steady heat for hours, unlike wood fires that got soaked by ocean spray and died out quickly. Tallow served multiple purposes beyond just heating. Pirates used the same fat for waterproofing their ropes, leather gear, and canvas sails. Smart crews would rub tallow directly on their clothes and skin to create a barrier against cold wind and salty spray. the really desperate pirates discovered that tallow could work as emergency food when regular supplies ran low. Imagine chewing on a greasy candle for dinner. Not exactly fine dining, but better than starving. What made tallow so effective was basic science. Fat burns much longer and hotter than wood, which was often wet and hard to find on ships. Pirates learned that placing several tallow lamps around their sleeping areas could raise the temperature just enough to prevent frostbite during the worst nights. Making tallow became a group activity during long, boring stretches at sea. It was like the greasiest team meeting in history. These sessions helped build friendships and trust among crew members who depended on each other for survival. Knowledge about tallow spread quickly through the pirate community without any formal teaching. Pirates basically turned cooking into the world's smelliest bonding experience. Tallow provided basic warmth, but pirates needed more reliable heat sources that didn't depend on having dead animals around. Galley hearths were brick or tile ovens built into ships for food preparation, becoming the only controlled fire allowed on board due to fire risk. These cooking areas provided steady heat during winter months, but the warmth stayed mostly within the galley itself. Pirates discovered that crowding into the cooking space was their best bet for staying warm during the coldest nights. It was like having the world's most exclusive sauna, except it smelled like hardtack and burnt fish. Larger ships built their galley ovens low in the hold for fire safety and proper weight balance. This meant pirates had to climb down into the ship's belly to find warmth, competing for space around the only legal fire on the vessel. The galley became prime real estate during winter storms. Pirates would gather around the brick oven, taking turns cooking meals and soaking up heat from the radiating stones. Smart crews learned to time their cooking so the oven stayed warm throughout the day and into the evening hours. Pirates basically turned dinner time into a heating competition where everyone wanted to be the chef. The brick or tile construction held heat much longer than metal, so even after cooking finished, the oven continued warming the galley area for hours. Pirates would linger in the cooking space long after meals ended. Getting access to galley warmth required careful scheduling and social politics. It was like fighting for the best seat at a campfire, except the campfire was also your kitchen and your only legal source of heat. Crew members developed unofficial rotation systems to share oven time fairly during the coldest periods. The technique worked best on larger vessels with substantial galley ovens that could accommodate multiple people. Smaller ships often had tiny cooking areas that barely fit one person, making galley warming less practical for entire crews. Pirates discovered that the most valuable real estate on their ship wasn't the captain's quarters. It was wherever food got cooked. The galley hearth provided reliable, safe warmth without the extreme risks of other heating methods, making it the foundation of most winter survival strategies. When galley warmth wasn't enough, pirates turned to methods that required no equipment but plenty of courage. Sleeping near gunpowder kegs sounds completely insane, but desperate pirates chose this terrifying option during freezing winter nights. Gunpowder storage areas were the warmest, driest spaces on ships because any moisture could ruin the explosive contents and kill everyone on board. These rooms were built near the ship's center, away from openings that let in cold air. It was like sleeping next to a giant bomb that happened to be your only friend keeping you from freezing to death. Thick wooden walls, sealed doors, and careful padding made these spaces much warmer than the drafty crew sleeping areas. Shipbuilders made these areas warm on purpose to keep gunpowder dry and usable. Gunpowder in the 16 and 1700s was incredibly unstable. A single spark, too much rubbing, or even static electricity could trigger an explosion that would blow up the entire ship. Pirates who chose to sleep near powder kegs were betting their lives that they could stay warm without accidentally ending their existence. Overcrowding made this dangerous choice more common. Pirate ships often carried more people than they were designed for, especially after successful raids. With sleeping spots packed tight, some sailors had no choice but to find other places to rest. Pirates actually created safety rules for sleeping next to explosives. They removed all metal objects that could make sparks and banned smoking completely. Some crews assigned guards to watch sleeping pirates and make sure nobody did anything stupid while half asleep. It was like having babysitters for grown men who chose to nap next to explosives. The mental challenge was just as hard as the physical danger. It was gambling with the highest possible stakes, where losing meant there wouldn't be enough left of you to bury. Pirates also found that the powder magazine was much quieter than other parts of the ship, which helped exhausted sailors get better rest. This warming method was appealing because it needed no special equipment, fuel, or preparation. These were people who faced death daily in sword fights, but their biggest danger might have been taking a nap in the wrong spot. Pirates discovered that their most dangerous enemy wasn't other ships or storms. It was their own bedroom choices. This led some crews to experiment with even stranger methods that turned common materials into survival tools. Wet blanket wind barriers involve soaking blankets and canvas in water, then letting them freeze solid to create barriers against icy ocean winds. This backward-seeming method turned soggy fabric into protective walls that could block the endless cold air that made winter voyages miserable. Pirates borrowed this technique from mountain travelers and cold weather explorers. Pirates basically turned their bedding into frozen shields that fought hypothermia instead of arrows. When fabric froze solid, wind couldn't get through it at all. Ocean winds could make temperatures feel 20 or 30 degrees colder, turning a merely cold night into something that could kill you. The process started with completely soaking blankets or sail fabric in water. Pirates then hung these materials in freezing air until they became stiff sheets of ice-covered cloth. The frozen barriers were set up around sleeping spots to create wind-free zones that felt much warmer than open areas. Working with frozen fabric took skill and perfect timing. Too much water made the material too heavy to move. Too little water meant it wouldn't freeze solid and would barely block any wind. The whole thing looked like pirates were doing the world's weirdest laundry in the middle of a snowstorm. Several frozen barriers could be arranged together to protect larger areas. Pirates discovered that setting up frozen blankets in L shapes around their sleeping spaces made surprisingly good windbreaks. These temporary shelters trapped body heat and blocked the worst ocean winds. The technique worked best during long cold periods when temperatures stayed below freezing for days or weeks. Using blankets as wind barriers meant giving up their normal job as warm bedding. It was like being a carpenter who only worked with ice and cloth. Having visible protection from the elements helped crew morale during the darkest, coldest parts of winter trips. This creative use of frozen fabric showed the cleverness that separated successful pirate crews from those who didn't survive their first winter at sea. Pirates turned wet laundry into life-saving armor. Probably the only time in history anyone was happy about frozen underwear. Some pirates took survival partnerships to an entirely different level. Sleeping with animals meant pirates shared their beds with livestock and pets during cold winter nights, turning living creatures into heating systems that provided warmth for both species. Pirate ships regularly carried goats, pigs, chickens, and other animals for fresh meat, eggs, and milk, making this arrangement work for everyone. It was like having a furry, four-legged electric blanket that occasionally made noise and wanted food. Body heat from a single goat could warm a sleeping spot enough to prevent hypothermia during the coldest nights. Pirates discovered that animals created steady warmth all night long, unlike fires that burned out or heated objects that cooled down. Cats and dogs made especially popular sleeping companions because they were smaller and easier to manage than farm animals. Pirates basically invented therapy animals, except instead of emotional support, they provided thermal support. Dogs were particularly good because they were loyal, protective, and created substantial body heat compared to their size. Making these arrangements work required understanding animal needs and habits. Goats preferred sleeping standing up or lying in certain positions, so pirates had to adjust their sleeping setups accordingly. Pigs were excellent heat sources, but took up lots of space and had strong opinions about how they wanted to sleep. Cleanliness became a major concern when sharing beds with farm animals. The smell situation on pirate ships went from terrible to farm-level challenging. Different animals offered different advantages as sleeping partners. Chickens were small and warm, but woke everyone up at dawn. Goats offered the best balance of size, warmth, and manageable sleeping habits. Some pirates formed strong emotional connections with their animal sleeping partners that lasted long after cold weather ended. Pirates who had spent months keeping warm with a particular goat found it surprisingly hard to turn that goat into dinner later. During the worst storms, animals and humans needed each other more than ever. It was like having roommates, except your roommate had 4 legs and couldn't help pay for anything. Knowledge about animal sleeping partnerships spread among pirate crews through informal networks. While living heat sources worked well, some pirates preferred warming methods they could control more precisely. Hot sand and hot stones involved heating these common materials over cooking fires to create portable heat sources during freezing winter nights. This technique turned ordinary beach materials into effective heating systems that provided hours of steady warmth without needing constant fuel or attention. Collecting the right stones started during coastal raids or beach visits. Basically, they went shopping for heating stones, except the shopping involved weapons and sometimes violence. Volcanic rocks and river stones worked best because they had already been tested by natural heating and cooling over many years. Sand was often easier to get and work with than stones. Pirates would fill metal containers, cloth bags, or even socks with sand, then heat these containers over cooking fires until the sand reached burning temperatures. The heated packages could then be wrapped in extra cloth and placed under bedding or inside clothing. Getting the temperature right was important for both safety and effectiveness. The whole operation looked like pirates were running a medieval spa, except instead of relaxation, they were fighting for their lives against freezing to death. Pirates developed ways to test temperatures using small amounts of water or spit. Multiple heated containers could provide warmth for entire sleeping areas when placed strategically. Pirates learned to put heated sandbags at the foot of sleeping spots to warm feet and legs, while heated stones were positioned near bodies and hands where blood flow was most important. The technique worked especially well during long stays on islands where fuel was easy to find. It was like setting up temporary pirate beach resorts, except the only amenity was not dying from cold. Wrapping techniques became an art form among experienced users, requiring multiple layers that kept materials insulated while allowing gradual heat transfer. Different crew members became specialists in heating techniques. Pirates who spent most of their time trying to steal valuable treasures found themselves treating common beach sand and ordinary rocks like precious supplies when survival was at stake. Pirates discovered that the most valuable treasure wasn't gold or silver. It was a warm rock that wouldn't burn your hands off. While stones and sand provided reliable warmth, the most convenient heating method required nothing more than what many pirates already carried. Smoking pipes provided pirates with both physical warmth and mental comfort during brutal winter months at sea. This wasn't just about enjoying tobacco. Pipe smoking became an important survival strategy that warmed hands, faces, and bodies while helping sailors get through long, cold work shifts. Pipes were basically tiny personal fireplaces that fit in your pocket and worked with one hand. The burning tobacco made a concentrated heat source that warmed whatever body parts were closest to the pipe. Pirates learned to hold pipes in specific ways to warm their hands, while the heated stem and bowl provided warmth to their faces and mouths. Sharing pipes created important friendships during the hardest parts of winter trips. Tobacco was expensive and often hard to get, so pirates developed detailed sharing systems. It was like early communism, except instead of sharing wealth, they were sharing tiny amounts of fire. These arrangements built trust and cooperation among crew members. Pipe smoking also worked as a timing tool for the work shifts and activities. Pirates learned to measure how long various tasks took based on how long it took to smoke a pipe bowl. The routine aspects of pipe preparation provided mental benefits that helped distract from cold, discomfort, and fear. Keeping pipes lit during storms required special techniques to prevent the fire from being put out by wind and spray. It was like trying to keep a campfire burning in a hurricane while making sure the campfire could fit in your mouth. Tobacco became so important that it worked like money on many ships. Group smoking sessions provided opportunities for planning, storytelling, and keeping spirits up during the worst parts of winter trips. Pirates were literally burning money to stay warm, since tobacco was one of the most valuable things they could steal or trade. Taking care of pipes and tobacco supplies became critical during long, cold periods. Knowledge about effective pipe smoking for warmth spread through the pirate community along with other survival techniques. Pirates turned their worst habit into their best survival tool, probably the only time in history smoking actually saved lives instead of ending them. These 7 methods show just how clever and desperate pirates became when facing winter's deadly cold. From burning fat to sharing beds with goats, pirates transformed ordinary items into life-saving heat sources through pure necessity and dangerous creativity.